Matt Taibbi has not had a shift to the right. The people who have had a shift to the right are the people who self-style themselves as democratic socialists, who self-style themselves as the left, yet they will defend the intelligence community, yet they will cheer on censorship, yet they will host sections of their own podcast called Canceled of the Week. And who will they choose to cancel? Journalists exposing censorship by our government officials. Journalists exposing how our First Amendment is being destroyed and shit on. Today, we have a video clip of a podcast called The Leftist Mafia. In this clip, we have a collection of self-styled socialists smearing two of the most accomplished journalists of our time as nothing more than right-wing grifters chasing MAGA cash. Matt Taibbi and Glenn Greenwald are top-tier journalists who have long lists of journalistic accomplishments that have helped to inform the public on the most serious of issues, acting as true members of a fourth estate. Their accusers are a collection of YouTubers armed with feelings of insecurity, catapulting culture war accusations while ignoring the substantive investigative reporting of both Greenwald and Taibbi. Coming in on a section of their show where they're going to cancel the person of the week. This is the Canceled of the Week segment. Here we go.
Who's being canceled this week?
Oh, I hadn't thought about.
Does the canceled party have to be someone who would be a surprise, like someone not typically canceled, or it could be literally
whoever you
anyone?
think. Could be anything. Could be petty. You can be as petty as you want.
I mean,
it could
I
just be a
think-
small ass beef, and you're just like, I'm canceling. Fuck him. He didn't
I
say
think
he liked me.
I think the cancellation this week has got to be, if there was any question about his career being completely in the garbage now, Matt Taibbi is done. He's done. It's over.
Second.
Yeah, I approve this motion.
Does anyone know what happened with him? So he was.
So their section of their podcast is called Cancellation of the Week. And according to Matt Binder, Matt Taibbi's career is in the garbage and he's done.
He was on the Michael Brooks show, I don't know, 4 years ago.
I was
they were going to talk about Elon Musk too on that show. Like I saw a tweet about that. And so to go from that to what he is now is so freaking crazy.
I know the answer to that question.
Matt Taibbi was friend of the Majority Report. He was in studio when I was there numerous times. Just shooting the shit, knocking on right-wingers and billionaires and all sorts of. And then there is that clip of him, knocking on Elon Musk with Michael Brooks. What happened to him is
Matt Taibbi used to be knocking on right-wingers and billionaires, and now he's changed. And he's changed because he's doing the Twitter files, right? Elon Musk has bought Twitter, and now Matt Taibbi and a small group of other journalists are being allowed access to some of the files of Twitter under the previous administration. And these files are exposing tremendous violations of the Bill of Rights, of our First Amendment. They're showing collusion between government agencies and private corporations to censor the speech of United States citizens. Not only private citizens, but also powerful people who hold office. Matt Taibbi, as usual, is doing a journalistic endeavor that is exposing the powerful. In this case, he's exposing the intelligence community, the FBI, namely, and others. He's exposing how they were violating our First Amendment rights to freedom of speech. And freedom of speech not only is your freedom to speak your mind without the government interfering, but it's also your right to hear other people's opinions without the government interfering, because you need freedom of speech to have an open society.
Well, first of all, the cracks started to come in 2017 or 2018, whenever that old book of his about his time working for that Russian website Exile, yes. There were things written in there, him and Mark Ames. They say it's satire. People, the actual.
They also said it was satire in the book, by the way, just so we're clear, because there is discussion of like with a 15-year-old, as well as a whole bunch of fucked up shit. But they said in the book this is satire. I just want to be transparent in that.
And women in Russia who were working with them at the time have come out when those allegations were being made. They came out and said, what you're reading in the book did not actually happen to us. We had good interactions with working under Mark Ames and Matt Taibbi. So take that for what you will. But those allegations that were leveled at him during the Me Too thing was the beginning. You could see him starting to turn a little bit. It's the same thing like when, you saw this with a few people, like all of a sudden, the resistance libs with Glenn Greenwald started to get under their skin. And all of a sudden, that era turned some people who I guess were never that staunch in their staunchly felt their beliefs. They were easier to turn around, and so that sort of was the beginning of Matt Taibbi. I don't know what turned him completely, but that was the beginning for sure.
About that. Apparently that's the moment where you can actually, that Simpsons moment with Ralph, where it's like, look, this is the exact moment you can see where his heart breaks. It's like, apparently that NPR for you is that moment for Matt Taibbi, where like they asked him, and it's like they kept pressing him until he eventually started apologizing, and he was like, I'm very, very sorry. It was satire. I didn't mean to put that in the book. I'm ashamed of it, deeply ashamed. And from that moment forward, you can like track it, where it's like he became more and more reactionary. I'm a little transphobic. I don't know all the questions. I don't know trans women in women's prisons. Are puberty blockers actually genital mutilation? I don't know. Like it just started going from there.
So now Matt Binder and the Serfs dude, which, oh my God, his face, I'm sure to a certain percentage of the population, I have a very punchable face. But this dude from the Serfs has the most punchable face I've ever seen. But anyway, Matt Binder now dives into this bullshit culture war story, Me Too allegations about Matt Taibbi writing in a book. Within their story talking about this, further smearing Matt Taibbi now, right? First they're smearing him as a right-winger, now they're smearing him with these allegations, whatever you may think about it, as Matt Binder puts it. But even they themselves, while describing this story, describe how it is satire. It is described as satire in the book, and the supposed victims of this satire say they had an enjoyable working experience with Matt Taibbi. Take that as you will. So they're claiming that was the beginning of Matt Taibbi's turn to the right wing, because he's a right-wing reactionary. He's also going to start to bring in Glenn Greenwald and talk about the resistance libs turning him right-wing. And we'll get into the reality of how the resistance libs turning him right-wing is not so much the case as him exposing Russiagate to be a fraud and resistance libs and people like Matt Binder losing their minds. But big picture, they're smearing Matt Taibbi and Glenn Greenwald as right-wing for taking anti-censorship stances, for doing critical journalistic work that exposes the power of the deep state, that exposes the power of the intelligence community, the FBI, the NSA, the CIA. And they're doing this from their little YouTube ivory towers while hosting a segment on the so-called Leftist Mafia, where they're doing their cancellation of the week. And the people that they're canceling are two of the most prominent journalists that are exposing the crimes of our government. So instead of seeing the reality of Taibbi and Greenwald doing work that is critical of some of the most powerful and clandestine institutions in the world, their take on it is that Me Too and, quote, resistance liberals, by their very existence, exposed and pushed Matt Taibbi and Glenn Greenwald to the right, because Matt Taibbi and Glenn Greenwald, they are intellectually inconsistent. Not these people who were, self-described socialists ready for a political revolution, attacking Democrats in 2016 and now defending Democrats to the death in 2022 and 2023. Those people aren't intellectually inconsistent. It's Matt Taibbi and Glenn Greenwald, some of the most accomplished journalists of our time, currently doing work exposing the most powerful institutions known to mankind. Okay, so Mr. Punchable Face, Mr. Serfs, is now accusing Matt Taibbi for being transphobic, and his specific examples are the questioning of prison housing when it comes to transgendered inmates, as well as the use of hormone blockers in minors. Without getting into the weeds on transgender, just think about how these people who are supposedly the left is supposed to be open-minded and tolerant, right? Their Leftist Mafia show is all about cancellation of the week, and they want to cancel two of the most prominent journalists who are doing really good work exposing powerful institutions, and they are smearing them as transphobic for questioning how we should house transgendered inmates and the question of doing hormone therapy to minors. Okay, these people seem very, very rational.
I mean, also, once you start doing that and you see the money coming in, that's it. You're done. Like you're going to be in there. Like if the money didn't matter to you, you wouldn't have done it to begin with. But once it starts pouring in, there's no coming back from it. Like Matt Taibbi and Glenn Greenwald, as long as being a right-wing reactionary brings them Substack cash, this is where they're going to go. I would love to see if there is a turnaround at some point. If like many years down the line, this is no longer a monetizable thing. Are they gonna still be who they are? Are they gonna turn around and jump around again? Well,
we have had that experiment for a long time, and both of them have been remarkably consistent. No matter who's in power, they've had basically the exact same style of journalism. Another accusation here, accusing Matt Taibbi and Glenn Greenwald of being right-wing grifters chasing money. So they're going to say two established long-career journalists with good pay who left respective organizations and went independent. Those people are right-wing reactionaries chasing after Substack cash. But the people who are not reactionaries are the people who are canceling journalists on a segment called Cancellation of the Week. Those people are the non-reactionaries. And the reactionaries are the people doing the good, real hard work of documenting and exposing the crimes of the most powerful institutions known to man.
You know, at least Greenwald, though, this was always sort of who he was. With Taibbi, though, this was a complete 180 in terms of like the stuff he was putting out and who he was going after. Like with Glenn Greenwald, he just happened to align with the left on things like the NSA when, you know, Glenn Greenwald's career was made via the Snowden files and stuff. But like we always knew that he was like one of these like right leaning at the very least libertarian types.
Glenn Greenwald lives in Brazil, and he lived there under Jair Bolsonaro, who was trying to constantly jail him. And during those years did investigative journalism that proved the former president not guilty of the crimes he had been imprisoned for and helped to free him, that president being a left-wing president. So beyond his Snowden, beyond his Russiagate reporting, like Glenn Greenwald is directly responsible for freeing a left-wing president from the prison of a real Brazilian fascist, all while living under that fascist government and threat of death and jail and imprisonment. That guy, he's a grifter for right wing, but these morons, these talking box heads, the leftist mafia, they're not grifters chasing cash. Even though their media and their content has changed drastically since 2016.
Taibbi, though, he was a guy who was out there on the ground at Zuccotti Park with the Occupy Wall Street people. He was someone, you know, like I said, coming into the majority report offices, knocking on all these right-wingers, sitting next to Sam Cedar. Like, this was a guy who was portraying himself this way, and his turn is certainly the one more interesting than Glenn Greenwald's.
Yeah, it's sad. It's just so sad.
Taibbi and Greenwald have been consistent. The people who are inconsistent are the people who describe themselves as socialist and are having a segment canceling journalists who are exposing the NSA, the CIA, the deep state, who are exposing the people who overthrow governments before they even finish their breakfast, who maim and torture and imprison innocent people the world over. This leftist mafia is defending the goddamn intel community. And they're smearing Glenn Greenwald and Matt Taibbi. It's just absolutely preposterous.
Yeah, it's sad. It's just so sad.
What's sad is that I just had to waste 5 minutes and 7 seconds of my life listening to that bullshit. What's sad is that 28,000 people watched it and 1.9 thousand people upvoted this video. Matt Taibbi has not had a shift to the right. The people who have had a shift to the right are the people who self-style themselves as democratic socialists, who self-style themselves as the left, yet they will defend the intelligence community, yet they will cheer on censorship, yet they will host sections of their own podcast called Canceled of the Week. And who will they choose to cancel? Journalists exposing censorship by our government officials. Journalists exposing how our First Amendment is being destroyed and shit on. That's fucking sad.
What's the matter? The CIA got you pushing too many pencils? Huh?